What's up? Do you want to live a good life? Do you just want to be happy, maybe successful? What do you need for a good life? Well, today in your luck, these existential stoic podcasts, we're going to talk about is reason really the key to a good life? I'm Randy, I'm Danny, my buddy Randy. What's up, Randy? God, how can I
Yeah,
get my own
Danny.
name wrong? Eh.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, this is an interesting one because, all these philosophers say that reason is so important. I think, therefore I am. I'd rather be Socrates dissatisfied than a pig satisfied or whatever it is. And yeah,
Yeah.
what are your
Well,
feelings on that, Danny?
well, that's why I was thinking about this topic because, like studying ethics, like if you look, especially, I mean, in Western philosophy, but broadly speaking, like we've always kind of saw reason as a thing that put us above every other living thing, right? That made us special because we can think, consciousness, ability to reason, rationalize, all that stuff. And so philosophers forever really have been saying that that's the thing that really defines humanity, right? Kant called us
Yeah.
rational beings. Aristotle called us rational beings, right? That's what defined us and made us unique and we're the source of our value. I mean, literally, it's the source of our value and stuff, in a lot of cases. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that interesting because we know that other people can think because we communicate with them and we can understand them communicating. But when we don't communicate with other people, how many times do you look at other people and you'd be like, are they retarded? Like that person clearly is not thinking. Like what is going on? And I wonder, just because we can't communicate with animals or any other life forms, if
Well,
they can
yeah.
actually think and all this stuff, we just don't know. And we just think, well, because we can communicate with each other, we're clearly the highest life form. So let's just kill off everything else.
Yeah, it's kind of very like egoistic, isn't it, to think that way?
Yeah.
I mean, and we found that like intelligence is more, I think, a gradation than anything else. I mean, look at elephants, dolphins, I mean, the great apes. They're all wildly intelligent. They might not be on our level, but they have social organization, they have, thinking. They even use tools in some cases. Like, you
Yeah,
know, it's crazy.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is that, right? That if we don't understand someone, we immediately think that they're unintelligent, which is problematic.
hmm
But it's
hmm
interesting too, because like I always wondered, is like you get this impression, especially from like, oh man, from like Plato, Aristotle, the ancients, the Stoics, in some cases, you get this impression that a good life is all about being a rational person. And I think this is
hmm
something, the existentialists push back against a little bit, but other philosophers in more modern times have pushed back against, which is like, but there's a lot more to us than just reason, right? Like, yeah, thinking is critical to who we are, but there's also feelings, there's will, there's lots of other stuff that might also contribute to who we are. And is, should we really be emphasizing reason above all else, I guess, is like one way to maybe look at this. And is that really the key to living a good life? Or is that the key to, you know, I don't know, conformity or
It
something?
reminds me when you put it that way, it reminds me of what Marcus Aurelius was saying, where he's like, what are we? A body like a collection of blood and pus, or the air constantly coming and going? No, we're the rational part of us or the spiritual part of us that that sustains. And I guess when you look at it that way, yeah, it makes sense. But I mean, the reasoning part of us, I think, is responsible for a lot of modern diseases.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's like anything else, right? It can go both ways. It can be good or bad, depending on how it's used, I guess, and the use you
hmm
put it to. And it is interesting because I mean, I think there is that anybody that's like, I think you would probably agree with this, that anybody who pursues like, learning and stuff, like you end up valuing reason too because you see like what you're capable of, learning new things, new skills, all that stuff. So there is a sense in which like it becomes an important source of value. But it is also interesting because it seems to exclude so much else of a human life by just focusing on reason. And even like in some cases, there's a suggestion of like everything else should be, Aristotle, I mean, pretty much directly says like, or Plato does too, that everything else about us, like our emotions and stuff, should be sort of guided by reason, so that we're never like led by any other thing besides the rational side of us. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because, is that I don't know, it's just weird. We are animals. So is that
Well,
really
okay, so where does the reason come from? Is it from the brain or is it from the mind or is it from somewhere else?
Oh God,
Because if
yeah.
it's the brain, that's like a literal physical connection to the rest of your body. Like it's just a bunch of nerve cells that go throughout your entire body connected to everywhere. So the brain is part of the body. So then that would be part of emotions and feelings and different things like that too.
Well, now you're stepping into the other mud of this conundrum, right? Which is essentially, all these
See, I
philosophers
thought
have
we were going to
different.
have an answer by the end of this
No, we're
one.
not. No answers. Sorry. No, but like, well, like you point out there, right? These philosophers come from different traditions. Some of them believed in mind-body dualism. Some of them, had this conception of a soul, things like that. Some even like more modern, there's physicalism, which is they believe everything has a physical basis. So, your mind is just your neurons firing in your brain. And I think that can definitely influence maybe how you answer this question. Because if you think that it is just mind, if it's just gray matter, there's nothing different from that to distinguish it fundamentally from anything else. Because it's all just neurons firing, right? That's what's dictating everything we see, experience, feel, whatever, who we are. And so, yeah, maybe that does change it a bit or kind of knock reason down a little. I think in these older
Okay.
philosophers, they really thought that, who we are is that rational. Like, look at that Marcus Aurelius quote, right? Like, that is who we are fundamentally, right? That conscious thinking thing. And it's weird. It's weird because you get like, it's almost like the body's separated from us in some way. Like, that's not really us. That's just like the physical meat and potatoes, but not the
Yeah.
important bits.
Yeah, it doesn't. The other thing that I was thinking along these lines is like, can reason be right if it's led us down the wrong paths in so many ways? Like, if reason has led us to destroy the world for money, is reason right? Or
Yeah.
like, there's another. So I'm doing a whole bunch of like these mind body type courses right now, and so for the
Convenient.
longest time, I know, right? Convenient. Yeah. So for the longest time, uh, doctors thought that if they saw something on an X-ray or an MRI or a CT scan, that was the cause for pain in the body. Well, it turns out there's a number of studies now where they've taken groups of people who have no pain and groups of people who have pain, and then they've stuck them in X-rays, CTs, MRIs, and the same numbers of abnormalities come up on imaging, meaning that any of these radiographic or findings are completely uh, they're non-deterministic. You can't tell if somebody has pain or not based on what you're seeing from an image. And yet, the medical field is still doing tons of spine surgeries, which
Oh yeah.
just,
Super dangerous.
they're
Yeah.
not working. And the crazy thing is, I heard this statistic the other day that the amount of money that they're making from this is equal to buying every person with chronic pain a Rolex every single year.
Oh yeah, dude, it's
That's
absurd
how
how
much money.
much. Yeah. Oh, because it's
Yeah.
just ridiculous how much this crap costs too. You go in for,
But it's
dude,
like this is
surgery in the U.S. is insane. Spine surgery, dude. You go in for spine surgery, I can't. That's got to cost what, like 100 grand at
probably
least.
hundreds
And
of thousands.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's not even being facetious. That's just how much it costs. It's absurd.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. And then it doesn't remove the pain. And so uh yeah, so like this is the question. Like reason has led us down this road, and then it continues to lead us down this road where maybe that's not the best answer.
Well, that's the thing though, right? Because it's like it's that trick about thinking rationally, thinking logically. It's that trick that, well, if I see it and I can make those connections, it must be right then, right? Because, the patterns align. And I'm sure we saw patterns in the past where every person that came in with pain, they probably scanned them. They probably noticed certain abnormalities. And, those studies were done that way. They never looked at anything beyond that, right? And I think this is
Hmm.
part of the problem. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it can lead us down interesting avenues. It's funny because even Kant says he doesn't think happiness is the goal of life. Kant doesn't. And one of the reasons why is that if God, he says, if God wanted us to be happy, he gave us like a really bad tool by giving us reason. Because reason isn't like, if you think about it, no, I mean, it's kind of funny, right? Like he said, like instincts or something would have been better aligned for happiness because reason doesn't really bring us happiness. And I think that's
No,
interesting too, to
it
phrase it
makes
that
us
way.
miserable
Yeah, we overthink
most of the
things,
time.
right? We make
Yeah.
things worse. We deny ourselves stuff. We just criticize ourselves. It's funny how much,
Hmm.
and I've always found this interesting. We put so much weight on reason for so long, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Totally important to have, obviously, but it's not the only thing, right? I mean, there's so much about
Hmm.
us besides just thinking.
So, what was the question about reason?
Oh,
Do
is
you
it
need
really the
reason to
key
have
to
a
a
good
good life?
life?
Yeah.
Ah,
Is it the key? I think you need it for sure. Like I think you need to
no,
think and you need to be
no.
thoughtful.
I would say no, not at all. And here's why. Maybe for a
My
good
dog
human
seems
life,
super happy. And he
that's
needs
what I
that
was gonna
as much.
say. That's what I was gonna say. Like dogs have the ultimate life, and according to us, they don't have reason. So
Yeah.
I was like, nah, not even a chance.
He's so happy all the time. It's so funny. Like,
Yeah.
what
Could you
that
imagine going everywhere being as happy as a dog? Just like, oh my God, I haven't seen you for like 3 minutes. I'm
yeah.
just like,
Totally forgot you existed. Yeah, it's funny. It's like that's you should read Eugene Ionesco's play Rhinoceros because that's the whole thing is like people
oh,
inexplicably
yeah,
turn to rhinoceri and then the other people are like, well, it does kind of look nice just like not having all these problems, right? Because they don't.
yeah,
Animals, when we look at animals, they don't seem to have all the issues we have because they're not overthinking everything. They're not making
yeah.
it more complicated than it is. And I think it's funny, it's when you think about this question, it kind of puts into perspective that all the things we have, good or bad, like if we overemphasize them, we make them worse. I think it makes it worse. Like it needs to be used in concert with everything else that makes us who we are.
Mm,
And that's the hard
hmm.
part, I think, to getting to a good life.
Yeah, it's definitely a skill to be able to use your reason when it's necessary and to be able to let it go when it's not necessary.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because I remember when I first read this, I was like, yeah, it makes sense in the one hand because like it feels good it feels good to like to think, to like accomplish things, to like use our reason to solve problems feels great. Like, there's always there's that pleasure there associated with it.
Hmm.
But, we can end up denying or forgetting about so much. Like we talk about this all the time, how like emotionally we felt very stunted for a long time because like we were never taught to like, express them and stuff. And like, so now you're like dealing with that. And it's like another hurdle, right? It's like another thing you got to work through. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh man, get one
Dude,
thing right.
I feel like the more I try to improve my life, the worse my life gets. Like I'm not sure if it's because I just have more like sensory acuity because I'm learning new things and like improving it, but I just feel like, I've been trying for so long to improve myself or to develop myself, and it's just like the more I do, the worse the more I just recognize that I'm angry, I'm moody,
You're
I'm just
talking
like,
about, yeah, for clarity, you're talking about in the context of like working through things, going through your past,
yeah,
figuring out like
yeah,
why you feel, yeah, working out your feelings, understanding your feelings, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Just ignoring
yeah.
it was better.
Dude, yeah, I had no problems back then.
I know, right? It is
I
funny,
was
isn't
like
it?
a dog. The problems with everybody else.
I know. I always wonder if it's because it's like something new that I'm trying to like figure out. That's why it's so difficult. It's like I'm used to like
Hmm.
just ignoring it, you know?
Yeah.
That feels natural. Yeah, it is funny, but that's also where that reason, emphasis on reason comes in, right? Is that we were never, that failure to express emotions, to understand. I always think about this too. Like we don't teach kids how to like handle like really difficult things in life, like death and like failure. We never. It's like it blows my mind almost that we don't do this in school and stuff. Like, you
Well,
know,
dude, modern society is not meant for living in, clearly. Like you look at some of these what do they call them? Like non-undeveloped societies where people live in a group. So like the kids all run around together and the adults, they don't have to worry about their kids because everybody's watching everybody. And so like there was a
yeah,
lot less stress for everybody. You didn't have to worry about, your kid getting molested by somebody because if that happens, you just find a dude and murder him. And then like all these problems were not there because we lived in a society back then. But nowadays, everybody's stressed beyond their gills, and they just, yeah,
yeah.
it's bad place.
It is funny, isn't it? Like everybody's kind of feels alone, stressed. They don't have that
Hmm.
community. Yeah, there's a lot of things that maybe aren't good. Well, it's funny too because I think about like, they didn't need to teach about like how to deal with death and stuff back in the day because people died so like kids died
All
so
the
often.
time.
To be an adult was rare. So like people were very familiar with death and you know, they had the local graveyard is probably walking distance. So you could go
Hmm.
visit all these people all the time and have that connection. But now it's like, I know people that like someone dies, they fly the body 17 states away, because that's where whoever else was buried a long time ago. And it's like, it's like
Hmm.
so disjointed almost, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, and also some of the societies had like a very strong spirituality where they
Yeah.
believed in a relation with the dead and the living.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we missed that too.
Interesting.
Well, the
Well, I
world's
feel like
messed up.
yeah, we winded around the world a little bit, but yeah, it is messed up. We agree on that. So yeah, is reason a key to good life? I would say it's important, but not the main. Like
Yeah.
it's can't you can't. I don't think it's good to emphasize one thing. You got to kind of work on all of it, maybe,
I
or
think
maybe I don't
I think since that Descartes thing, or was it Descartes? I think therefore I am.
know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think since that we've gone off the deep end. You know how like things swing back and forth in a
Well,
pendulum?
it's like the
I think we've
scientific
gone way
revolution.
too far in the
Yeah,
direction of think therefore I am. We've become completely cerebral. So now we have all these chronic illnesses and all these problems because people spend too much time in their head and not enough time in their body. And it needs to kind of swing back.
that kind of makes sense though, right? Because the scientific revolution of that era was like what pushed us into the modern age, so we value it so much. But it's valuing really that like logical thinking, empiricist mentality, mechanistic view of the world. That's it. And
Mm,
yeah, I think that's maybe that pendulum did swing a little bit too far one direction. We gotta get to the center,
hmm.
and I don't know when it's gonna happen. Maybe one day. Who knows?
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, if you like this episode, check us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Please like, subscribe. It helps out a lot. We will be back this week with another episode. Until then, though, later, Andy.
Later, Danny.